Okay, hello, Miss Sandra LaRose, and everybody who is going to be listening to this Life is Limitless podcast with an amazing friend and amazing guest, Miss Sandra. We're going to learn a little bit about Sandra's role in life, a little bit about her history, and a little bit about her mission, and we're going to have a fun back and forth conversation between two fellow speakers who are on a mission to hopefully make an impact in this world. Miss Sandra, you have been on the road and you have done now hundreds engagements to this point in your career. Yes.
I have. And first, thanks for having me on, Cody. It's an honor to be on your new podcast, and I really hope everything's going great for you.
I appreciate that, Sandra. Besides, like we were chatting off camera here, besides having the sniffles and the sore throat, everything else in life is really great.
Yeah, I get you now with having little people in the house. I have a 2-year-old granddaughter now, so now I'm getting the daycare colds.
Oh, yes.
So
Yeah.
it's
Well,
wonderful.
I couldn't agree more. Our doctor actually told us when we first had our first child, a few years ago, he said, your daycare is more or less going to bring a lot of things home that you didn't think was
Absolutely.
going to come home. And he was spot on. So, and don't get me wrong, it's not even only from the daycare. It's just little kids in general. They
Well, and
need,
us going into schools too, so
yes.
it's bound to happen.
Yeah, and thankfully I got quite a few days on the couch in my recliner last week during Feb break. So Monday's today, and we're back at life today. So yeah, Sandra, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself, and we're gonna continue on with what you do as a profession after that, and then we're gonna go back and forth and ask you some questions, and we're gonna chat about those kind of situations if that's okay with you.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
I was born and raised in Regina. My husband and I now live out by Tyven, Saskatchewan, which is don't blink because you'll miss it. We farm out there. We have a mixed cattle and grain farm. I am a mom of 2. I have 6 stepkids, and all of those 8 are adults. Well, 7 are adults. And Kailynn will be coming up in the conversation. And I have a 2-year-old granddaughter and a 16 and an 18-year-old granddaughters, all girls. So I work full-time in Regina at Ignite Adult Learning. So I am the manager of operations here. And again, like I said, we farm. So busy life. I like to keep busy, obviously. And back to the kids, I lost my 17-year-old daughter, Kailynn, in 2018, which is, if I hadn't lost her, I would have not met you, Cody.
Yeah.
She was involved in a train vehicle accident, and after she was distracted by her phone near Weyburn. And she fought for 6 days. Up in Saskatoon's pediatric intensive care unit, but ultimately died of severe head trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And that's brought me to where I am now in life. As everybody knows, you can't plan your life. You can plan as much as you want, but it doesn't necessarily come out the way that you think it should or that you thought it should.
Yeah.
And that's how my life has now been diverted. I thought that I would be, I used to tell Kailynn all the time, I'll be your friend when you're living in your own house.
Hmm.
And I never, ever got that opportunity. It's hard. And I have an older son.
Yep.
He's 10 years older than Kailynn, so him and I are now friends. Sometimes. So it's been a journey, and the journey is continuing. It's different every day.
Yeah.
It's a tidal wave. It's a tsunami. As many people say with grief, right? Like you don't know what is going to make a change or how things are. Your trajectory is going to go.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Sandra, so what is it? Of course, I know, but for those who are going to be listening, what is it that you do for a professional career now?
So aside from my full-time job,
Yes, sorry.
I am a road and rail safety advocate. And I have been a road and rail safety advocate since finding out the cause of Kaylynn's collision back in 2018. I found out the cause of the collision unofficially when I had one of the police officers from CPKC bring Kaylynn's phone back out to the farm, and it was prior to her celebration of life.
Yeah.
So I found out unofficially at that time that the cause of the collision was deemed distracted driving. She was looking down at her phone. She drove a standard, so she wasn't holding it.
Yeah.
And very soon, I remember when Kailynn was still in the hospital, and I remember saying to my husband, and I could tell you the exact place I was standing in Royal University Hospital. And I remember saying that if I found out that her phone had anything to do with the collision, that I wasn't going to keep quiet, and I haven't, and I will continue to speak until people don't want to listen to me anymore. And so I started my journey in late 2018. I had emailed then SGI Minister Joe Hargrave. I had emailed his office because I was infuriated at that time. I was mad. Obviously I was mad.
Yep.
But I was equally angry at the fines that they had for distracted driving, because they were $280 back then. And Kailynn was, 16 at the time of her accident. She died the day after her 17th birthday. But at 16 years old, she would drop $300 on makeup at Sephora.
Yeah.
So, adults aren't going to be fazed by $280.
Yeah.
So I requested a meeting with him and then offered up Kaylynn's story for them to use in any way they saw fit. So in May of 2019, I launched alongside with SGI the Distracted Driving campaign, where I was the voiceover in the TV and radio commercials, and Kaylynn's photo was popped up at the end of the commercial. And then as well, January of 2019, Operation Lifesaver Canada, which is the rail safety organization in Canada, they reached out to me in late 2018. They flew out to the farm from Ottawa and recorded a rail safety video and Kaylynn's story was the first Stop Track Tragedies video, which has millions of views now and is still being viewed. And so I inadvertently started speaking.
Yeah.
In 2019, Manitoba Public Insurance reached out to me to see if I would participate in their Friends for Life speaker series. And I thought, sure, why not? I didn't have a presentation made, but I'm like, I can write a story. It's Kailynn. I get to talk about Kailynn.
Yep.
So I wrote a presentation, and of course, COVID hit and everything was locked down. So it wasn't until 2021 that I did virtual presentations. And then 2022 was the first year that I did an in-person presentation, and it's just taken off since then.
Yeah, since then, how many presentations would you have said you've
I think
just ballpark?
I don't even really know how many presentations, but I've spoke to close to 50,000 students.
Beautiful.
And it's initially I was just working with Manitoba Public Insurance.
Yep.
And then I was like, I could do this because it's hard to explain what it takes to do a presentation like this.
Yeah.
I go up on stage and relive my daughter's death, over and over and over.
Yeah.
And especially when you're doing a speaking tour, like I go out to BC for a 2-week tour and I do 20 presentations in 10 days.
Yeah.
So you're reliving that. But, my focus is on the audience, and I just picture Kailynn.
Yeah.
I imagine my life would have been different if she would have seen a presentation like mine or heard a presentation like mine, and that's what continues me motivated.
Yeah.
And I, once I did the speaking tour, the 2-week speaking tour in Manitoba in 2022, then I knew that I could do this. So then I started reaching out to other organizations. I emailed direct to the top of ICBC, the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia, and within 2 weeks I had a contract with them because they have an amazing road safety speaking program.
Beautiful.
And then Operation Lifesaver, it was funny because I actually had emailed, back then it was Sarah Mays was the director. I emailed Sarah and I'm like, do you know anybody that could help me get into Eastern Canada? Like, I'm trying to figure this out. And she's like, us. so I have a
Well, there you go. Ask and you shall receive.
So I have a contract with Operation Lifesaver Canada as well, and I am the Youth Rail Safe Driving Consultant, and I sit on a committee for the Program Advisory Committee as well. So, and a rail safety advocate. So, or a rail safety ambassador, I should say. So I work alongside the Saskatchewan Committee for Operation Lifesaver, and I just, to me, my goal is to speak in every high school in Canada.
Powerful intentions. I love that, Sandra. When you were talking about how, if you shared that presentation for your daughter, Kailynn, how much it might have made a difference in her life and everything else. I can relate with that so much. That plucked on my heartstrings because, of course, my story. A few folks who might be listening know my story. But, that's exactly one of the things that I want to do as well, too. I want to share my messages with kids that hopefully can retain those messages and change their trajectory compared to where I used to be in life. And when you come at a place with compassion and heart like that in the first place, things, they don't necessarily fall into place, but what they're meant to happen, they're meant to happen. And, of course, seeing you on the road, seeing you all your partnerships, your communities that you get to travel to, seeing everything that you get to do across Canada is absolutely inspiring, and it's beautiful. And I know it's making a difference in thousands of people's lives.
Yeah, I hope so. And we aren't gonna, like, both of us in our journeys, we're not going to save everybody. I'm not blind to the fact that people are still on their phones. I drive the highway to Regina, 50 minutes every day, one way, and I see it. But I can't not try.
Yeah.
And I can't, I don't know. It's so preventable.
Yeah.
That it's, and I mean, even the story of resilience and, if I know when when you tell a story, it brings out stories.
Yeah.
And I've always said, like, statistics are fine if you're a numbers person.
Yeah.
But I don't know one student, and maybe there are a few out there, who, thrive on numbers, but they will remember Kaylynn's photo.
Yep.
They will remember Kaylynn's mom, hopefully.
Yep.
And remember Kaylynn's story and share it. And that's the only goal.
Yeah.
Is to just save lives by sharing a real story.
Yeah, well, stories are one of the most powerful tools that we have to share any education in our lives. When you think of it, it's been thousands of years of humankind have passed down traditions, passed down experiences, passed down lessons through storytelling, and our brains are like receptive and open to that way of learning. More than I would say most things, unless you're an analytical person, when the numbers really strike a person's mind more. I actually, so I'm a part of the CAPS or association, so Canadian Association of Professional Speakers in Canada. And so I went to basically a mastermind group maybe 8 months ago in Calgary with a few other fellow folks in the Alberta chapter. And there is a gentleman that has a daughter that has maybe some learning disabilities. And he shared a story of him having a conversation with a brain doctor. I can't think of all the words that I need right now, but and that this brain doctor actually said one of the best ways you can teach your daughter with her learning disability is through storytelling. And that's because our brains actually receive messages in a different way, and they retain onto things in a different way, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, you go from you go from movies, you go from books, you go from, Once Upon a Time in, Imagination Land, right? Everything is told, and music,
Music
right?
is a story.
Yeah.
And that's why people can remember lyrics.
Yeah.
I always said if you taught math to music, everybody would pass math.
Well, that's pretty incredible, actually. And, that's like that Miss Rachel. I don't know if you're familiar with.
Right? Oh, yes, I know Miss Rachel.
Who doesn't by now, actually? But like everything she does is in song and tune, right? And she is a person that I do believe, if I can remember correctly, she had to learn how to educate or help communicate with her own kid.
Yes.
And that's why she started getting into this kind of music and teaching. And now look at her, 50 million views on YouTube and stuff like that.
No, it is. It's very, it is. Storytelling is at the heart of everything.
Yeah.
And even the most analytical person can tell a story.
Yeah.
Even somebody with a learning disability can tell a story.
Yeah.
Even somebody with a mental disability can tell a story. There's, the only person that really can't verbally tell a story is somebody who would be nonverbal.
Yeah.
They can tell a story in different ways.
Yeah.
So it's all, it's being relatable, and that is, hopefully what both of us are, and I do feel that we are. Being able to share the same room with you, being able to share stories together is something I look forward to more in the future, hopefully. I know.
Because I've heard you speak, and you speak from the soul, you speak from the heart, and you speak with intention, and it's a very powerful message that you share, that I've heard you share.
It's very, and it's very humbling to have somebody say that to you, and I'm sure you feel the same way when somebody, gives you the compliment. At first it was hard for me to take the compliment.
Yeah.
Because we live in a world, or at least I did, where I had, you have to put everybody first because, you're a parent, you're an employee, you're a spouse, so you always seem to put yourself last.
Yeah.
So then when I was, basically put myself into the spotlight, and I'm not a shy person. I've never really been a shy person. I like to talk, so I'm in a great
great position of life. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Kailynn would tell you that I like to talk too much. So would my husband. But, when you put yourself out there, you have to figure out a way to accept the compliments and the criticism.
Yeah.
And and there is criticism, as much as when people see my presentation and they hear what the story is about itself.
Yeah.
And then you send out the survey afterwards, and then they're critiquing you, and it's like, it was too long. It was, she talked too fast. I've never had talk too fast, but my presentation's too long, or it bounced around, or, and there's a reason that I set up my presentation the way I did.
Yep.
And it's not going to sit with everybody the same way because everybody learns different. And and it was on my way into work this morning. I was listening to a podcast. It was Dateline, of all things. And it was a lawyer that said, you always know what you're saying, but you don't know what the others are hearing.
Oh, yeah. That's very powerful because...
and that's just the way it is. And I think as a speaker, we have to keep that in mind because we can't feel like we're battered down with one bad comment. One suggestive comment that maybe we should change this.
Yeah.
Because change is always good too.
Yeah. moving forward, adapting and, evolving is always good. I mean, like the first presentation I gave, 5 years ago when I realized I want to do this compared to now, there's definitely day and night difference.
Oh yeah.
And criticism and, compliments, they both come hand in hand.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the truth is, I've shared this story a few times with other friends, family members, even in my presentations before. Lots of times, we can get all the greatest feedback, but then we take in one, maybe not so constructive criticism, and then it could really set us up for the rest of the day of being in a tough situation.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily that our brain only wants to focus on that, but it's like wired in human beings to want to almost look for what is possibly destructive in our life. And that's like old wiring from old cavemen days when we had to look for the saber-tooth tigers. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So we could keep ourselves alive, right?
Right.
Now we aren't necessarily fighting off saber-tooth tigers anymore or anything, but our brain is still wired to make sure you search out for the negative, just so you can overprotect yourself if you have to. And it is a lot of rewiring, a lot of hard work, a lot of back and forth.
Yeah.
With trying to do the opposite, right? So I've came to realize that now. I can get, 50 compliments, but I can have one thing that I didn't like myself, and that wears on me sometimes too.
And for myself, my focus and my focus audience has primarily been teens.
Yep.
And then I had a request to speak to adults. Well, I had to rewrite my presentation a little bit, like same story, but a different delivery.
Yep.
And I am still to this day nervous standing in a room of adults. And it's nerve-wracking, and I don't know why, because you would think that the teenagers would be more judgmental than the fellow adults, but it's all in my own head.
Yeah.
Right? I know that. And I've been working on that version of my presentation. I'll deliver it, and then I'll kind of sit back and think about what I said and how I would have, received that message if I was on the receiving end. And it's a hard thing to focus on, the adult portion of the audience. When it's a mixed audience, I still focus on the teens, and I speak as if I'm talking only to teens, because obviously in schools you're going to have teachers and some parents will come out, but when it's just adults, and I mean, for my story, and even your story, it's not just a teen problem.
No,
like
not at all,
any driving habits or accidents, collisions, or anything like that, it's not a teen, and when I had approached SGI about starting the speakers program, and I met with Dustin Duncan, the minister, when they actually got back to me to say that they were going to start the program, I was quite impressed that Dustin had said, like, this is, distracted driving and road safety is not, it's not just a teen issue, it's a people issue.
Yeah.
So
Which is a beautiful piece of feedback.
I give SGI kudos for opening up our presentations to everybody.
Yeah.
And not just high schools.
Yep.
Because my other contracts are limited to high schools, which is, that's, kudos to them too for, having it. But, I wish that every province had a program like this.
Yeah. Well,
because it's very needed.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you, and I've met Dustin Duncan in the past as well too. I was one of their keynote speakers in Weyburn for the Chamber of Commerce, actually. I think about a year and a half ago. So I've spoke between corporate, Chamber of Commerce's, high schools, treatment centers, a little bit of everything too, and you definitely change different parts of your presentation in different ways that reflect different points, and I definitely understand that. But yeah, that happened right after where I got a chance to meet Dustin, and then a few months later the SGI phone call actually happened. So I was pretty thankful to be able to say yes to that one, because prior to that conversation, another political party here in Saskatchewan, not saying politics at all, because I'm not going to go that way with the podcast or my life right now at all. But some folks reached out and they said, Cody, have you ever thought about changing your careers of maybe going into politics? I said, what an honor. That's incredible. That's amazing. Just even the gesture to think that I was going to be a person to, go into that role. Respectfully, I said, no, thank you. And then a few weeks later, somebody in the banking world, the commercial banking world, reached out to me and said, hey, have you ever thought about becoming a commercial banker? And that was another big thing that I had to contemplate, because they're like, with good bonuses, hard work, you can make anywhere between 150 to 200K a year. I'm like, that's life changing for me and my family.
Right.
But respectfully, once again, I said no. And then it was the third phone call with actually SGI, where I was like, hey, you know what? This is the opportunity that I wanted to say yes to. And that's the speakers program that me and you are a part of, and our fellow speakers together, which has been an amazing opportunity for the last just over about a year now, right?
Yeah.
I know last year I did 80 presentations myself. Now that's between high schools, corporate, elementary, just everything, right? And I wouldn't say all of them, but a good chunk of them were also with the help with the SGI speakers program, which is beautiful, where they, for those who are listening, help pay for some of the speaking fees for me or Sandra to come and speak for schools, nonprofits, organizations, and come share experiences to help your organization or youth learn from the messages we have to share, and they can help pay for some of the travel, accommodations, and some meals. And it's a beautiful partnership that in reality takes a school 5 to 10 minutes to set up an application, and then there's a couple of things back and forth, and then you have a 2-week lead time. You normally can have that happen, right, pretty cleanly. And so that's a beautiful partnership. And
it is, and it's a streamlined process. I always say to schools, because I do my mail outs, like my emails to the schools, mass emails, trying to market the program, because I'm finding that lots of schools don't know about it.
Yep.
And so I, send out to different, pockets here and there. And I always say, your only responsibility is the simple application and an hour of your time.
Yeah.
And an hour of class time, and fill your gym or your auditorium with students.
Yeah.
That's the only thing, where compared to the old granting program that they had before, teachers had to apply, and then they had to be approved, and then they had to report back after, and we know how busy teachers are. For sure.
And just to clarify, there was a shorter time period, right? It wasn't a full year span where people could apply for that.
No, there was deadlines. There's really no deadlines with the speakers program now. It just runs continuous. Whereas the other one, there was deadlines that you had to meet, which excluded months, and because the school year is short. Students wouldn't agree with that, but for us speakers, we know that there's going to be very limited, presentations in June because of grad.
Yep. Finals. And then start of school.
Yeah, and then July and August there's going to be none. September there's going to be very little, maybe at the end of September. Yep. December is probably going to be a no-go because of Christmas break.
Yep.
February is a short month. January's finals. So you have all of these things that we have to maneuver around. As well, to try and connect the dots. Plus, we're busy
with our own lives.
I'm lucky that I have an amazing boss who, and I can do my job from a hotel room. So
which is beautiful.
I'm lucky that way. Yeah, because I'll tell you, being on the road and speaking, you're not going to be rich. And we don't do it for the money, that's not a motivating factor at all. My motivating factor is to make sure that every student that I speak to gets to experience what Kailynn didn't.
Yeah. Well, once again, like I said, to go back to intention, where it comes from the heart and the compassion and everything, I think that's when somebody makes the ultimate impact in this world. When they have a purpose, they have a reason, a deep meaning why. And I can't remember the lady's name that me and you sat together with when we were at the SAD conference. I was one of their speakers. But Marquita, yes. And she said something so profound to me that really just, it's something I thought about for months and years at that time. I shared a little bit about where I came from and stuff, and then she kind of mentioned, so you're really kind of on a path of redemption, more or less, she said a little bit. And I was like, yeah. you know, I made a lot of mistakes in my past, and maybe a big part of why I do what I do is me trying to make up for those who I hurt in the past, or you know, for my family to see me in destructive states with my addictions and my mental health issues in the past. And it's very much the same. You know, I have learned that what we do, it can be a profession. So like, you can pay your bills, you can pay your expenses, you can take care of your family, you can put groceries in the fridge by doing what we do. Absolutely incredible. But the truth is, I loved doing it when it was $50 a pop and I had to drive 4 hours somewhere.
Right. Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. I loved it
Yeah.
just as much then as I do now.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
so it's
I'll be honest, I love it even more because now it's not like I only have to, or sorry, I only get to do this once every 3 months. Because like when I first started speaking, that's all it was for me and my
right.
buddy Regan, which, you know, now it's at a point where like the days that I get to go speak, I wake up in the morning, I'm like, this is Christmas morning, let's go.
Me
even
too.
if even if
I'm
I
the
have to
same
drive
way.
5 hours.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I'm going to be
Yeah.
going out to Ontario in March, and you know, I've been watching because I'm in the Sudbury area,
Yep.
Perry Sound, and so I've been watching the weather because they've been slammed. So I'm hoping Mother Nature is going to cooperate and not slam them with snow just before or while I'm there.
Yep.
So
Well, best of luck for the travels for sure. I know I was just in Sudbury, like I flew into Sudbury to do an MC engagement in Southern Ontario, which that's not my normal go-to, but you know, sometimes you got to step outside of on the other side
yeah,
of fear and comfort and see what's possible and see what you can do in this life. And at that time, there's some news and some scare about a storm coming in. Thankfully, we made it home safe, or I made it home safe, but. You know, I would love to just touch base on a question that I would really love to ask you. I sent just a few to you just in case we not needed something else to chat about. But the truth is, I love hearing these different things from different speakers because I know one of the best things that I get to do at the end of a day is if somebody comes up to me after and shares a story with me or shares something that resonated with them, man, once again, like getting to do what you get or we get to do for a profession and a paycheck at the end of the day, that's beautiful. But hearing these stories is like sometimes, or I
yeah,
shouldn't say sometimes, it's payment lots of times in itself. I mean,
yeah, it is.
so one of the questions I would love to ask you is, without using any names, please share a powerful story that you love to share with us, basically on some feedback after one of your presentations. Now it can be, you know, a month ago, it can be a year ago, just something that
I'm
somebody
gonna
came and resonated with you, you know?
I'm gonna share the first presentation that I ever did in person.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
it was in Winnipeg
Yeah.
at I can't remember the school. It's the biggest school in Winnipeg because I presented to, I think it was 1,200 grade 11 and 12 students. 'Cause
Wow.
they only had the 11 and 12s.
Yeah.
And it was their first assembly post-COVID. So
Yeah.
imagine the excitement of having everybody in the gymnasium at the same time. So I did my presentation, and this wasn't really feedback. At the end of my presentation, not many people ask questions because it's not a presentation that leaves a lot to ask, especially in a group setting. But this particular presentation, I stuck around, and there was probably 50 students came up. But then there was one young girl that was sort of hanging back, and I saw her, and she came up to me after everybody had left the gym, and she shared with me that her mom had just completed suicide 2 weeks earlier. And of course, I'm not a counselor. I
Yeah.
know my limitations. I know what I can and can't say and should and shouldn't do. Or
Yeah.
so I said, let's go find a place to sit down. So we went out into the hallway where they had like commons area and tables. So we sat there, and we just chatted, and I just wanted to make sure she had somebody to talk to, and had she talked to somebody, and then we walked and we found the guidance counselor, and the guidance counselor came up to me afterwards and said she's never opened up
Yeah.
to anybody. And I've had other experiences at other presentations, not necessarily suicide, but where students have lost parents or lost a sibling or a friend. And, it's when you can reach somebody to the point that it opens their heart up and their soul up to make them feel comfortable enough to share their story, that's a win right there.
110%.
Because, I lost my brother to suicide in 2012, so I know how devastating that is.
Yeah.
And I know, my life, even after Kailynn died, it could have gone this way or it could have gone this way.
Yeah.
And there's good and there's bad, and, I'm not going to lie, right after Kailynn died, I'm not going to lie saying that when I was driving down the highway, I didn't think about crossing that center line.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's a parent out there who's lost a child that has not thought, I just want to be with them.
Yeah.
But when your words, which aren't even related to suicide,
Yeah.
can bring that out in a person, like that is, that's why we do it.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. Oh man. This is going to take me a minute here, but like, I used to like have this old saying, well, if you can change one person's life, it's a good day. But we all know one person isn't just one person normally by themselves. It's the brothers, it's the sisters, it's the mother, it's the father, it's the cousins, it's the class, it's the community, it's the counselors, it's the teachers, it's everybody. It's not one person. And so when you're able to cause a change and an impact some person's life, whether it's a 14-year-old young girl, whether it's a 60-year-old person, it's not one person you're helping change. It could be a ripple effect of positive change that you could possibly impact hundreds of people's lives within that one person's life. And so, I stopped saying if I can impact one person's life years ago, that's a good day, because that it might be one person that you think initially, but it's going to lead into hundreds of other people's lives that could be positively impacted. And that's such a beautiful way to live a life. We have definitely taken pain out of our lives that could have wrecked us, that could have kept us buried with all that pain that we had to go through in our lives. And we could have let it drown us. Instead, we chose to rise above those feelings and those times in our life, and now we're able to hopefully impact people's lives for the better, and hopefully change people's lives and save people's lives for the better. That's, if you ask me, I don't know how long I'm personally going to do this speaking thin for, but I mean, why would I ever want to change anything in my life if I get to do that from time to time, just like yourself, right?
I feel the same way. We almost can change the word if to when.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
When we impact something. And, it's a snowball effect, like you said. Yeah. When Kailynn died, it didn't just affect me. I'm not the only person who lost her. Her dad lost her, my husband lost her, my parents, my sister, her cousins, her friends,
Yeah.
and I speak to all of that in my presentation.
Yeah.
I actually put less emphasis on me as mom.
Yeah.
Because there's always emphasis put on mom. That's
Yeah.
the first person that people think of when a child dies, is the mother. And, I'm not the only person. And I've never claimed to be the only person. But I felt, and it was just like at Kaylynn's celebration of life,
Yeah.
I was not going to let anybody do the eulogy, because nobody could do the eulogy like I could.
Yeah.
And, her death caused a snowball effect too.
Yeah.
And there's still, the pain and the heartbreak and the grief is never going to leave me until the day I die. And it's there every day, but every day's different.
Yeah.
But I also know that I'm not alone in my grief.
Yeah.
There's other moms, who've lost their kids, other parents who've lost their kids, Kaylynn's friends, so I know, my granddaughter, my 2-year-old granddaughter is the spitting image of Kailynn. Like in every way, in looks, in her sassiness, her she's hilarious, and she's exactly how Kailynn was. And it's, that was more shocking to me than speaking in front of 1,200 students was when that little girl was born, and it was like being back on August 21st, 2001.
Yeah.
You know, when Kailynn was born. It was,
And
you know,
yeah.
but for the, like, when you were talking about that snowball effect, that's just it.
Yeah.
You know, and I know that if I impact one person, or when I impact one person in the audience, that hopefully that person is going to go and share that story.
Yeah.
And I do get parents messaging me on Facebook after their kids have seen the presentation.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I want.
Yeah.
Just share her story.
Yeah. Which is absolutely incredibly powerful. And I believe, you know, sometimes those little angels in the audience, that's what I like to call them, little angels in the audience, they're there for a reason. You're there for a reason. And if the whole, you know, 1,999 others didn't listen to the story or didn't get as much from it, I mean, in reality, that one person makes the world of a difference because the ripple effect. You know, I remember speaking for a charity event. So I didn't charge like anything. This was a few years ago. And I already worked like a 12-hour day that day. And I went there, and I'm not going to lie, I was struggling to speak for whatever it was. You know, once in a while you have a presentation that might be a little tough. I think it might have had something to do with working a long day already and then setting up. And I believe there's also an energy exchange. So if you feel like you're just putting your services out there and stuff and you're not expecting some back, sometimes for me, I can get my own head about that, an old confidence thing. So now I try my best to just make sure everyone is, you know, taken care of one way or the other. But, you know, it was a presentation that I wish I would have got back. And this was maybe 4 years ago, 3 years ago. But what made the world a difference on the way home, you know, is this lovely lady messages me and says her son, same name as me, okay, has a son named Cody. He's going through a few things. And she said, I need to hear this, and he was with me today, and he need to hear this because he's going through a few things. And right there and then, you know, I was like, you know, even though I didn't feel so good about what I offered, that's why I was there, you know. And they carried on, and I've checked in from time to time with that family, and things are going good from what I've heard last a few months ago. And, you know, I don't necessarily know if I had a big impact or anything like that, but she said at that time, that's what he needed to hear. And, you know, I was all in my head about that presentation, but, you know, having that little angel in the audience being able to share some feedback was amazing. Yeah. And it's not one here and there that a person gets. And especially if you do it as much as we do it, you get to have those stories a fair bit, actually. And it's something that fills the heart. Honestly, it does.
I've said, you know, you walk into, and I don't know if you've had this experience, you walk into the school and you do your introductions in the office, and the teacher who's in charge of everything takes you down to the gym or the auditorium, and you get everything set up, and then you've got time to kind of chit chat, the small talk, and and I always get the like, or don't always, but you know, relatively often, you know, there might be a few troublemakers in the audience, and you know, I'm like, I'm not worried about it, you know. And not once. Like, there's been one presentation in Alberta where there was one boy who very obviously was being disrespectful, but not to the point that he was disrupting everybody else around him, but he was trying to disrupt me. Yeah. So I just looked away, you know, but, like, these kids are not given enough credit. Yeah. They're amazing audiences. They have amazing questions. You know, I was in Moose Jaw, and this was a recent one, and did my presentation, and after the presentation, one of the students came up to me and she asked me if Kailynn had survived, what would her life be like right now? I mean, obviously I can't speak to that. Yep. I can guess, you know, but I thought, wow, like, what a question, you know. I mean, I get a lot of questions about her cat, but you know, it's, you know, I just always think in the back of my mind, I always have, like, what would Kailynn say? What would Kailynn do? Because above all, I'm doing this for her.
Yeah.
You know, I made a promise to her when they were taking her off of life support that I was going to make her proud. And it's a promise that I intend to keep. And I think she would be proud.
I've never had the privilege or honor of meeting your daughter, of course. We know that. But there's no question in my mind that she's 110% proud of you.
You know, and if she had
yeah.
survived, she'd be sharing her story if she could.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But, you know, whether or not you believe certain different religions or faiths and stuff, I am a believer of faith, and I believe she's watched every single one of your presentations.
Oh, I think she's right there with me. I think she's had a hand in everything because I wasn't a writer.
Yeah.
I'm not a writer. She was the writer. She wanted to be a creative writing teacher and an English teacher. You know, that's what she wanted to do. She was going to be a high school teacher. Yeah. You know, and I was out in BC recording my presentation out there, and the lady from ICBC said, you know, you said in your presentation that Kailynn wanted to be a high school teacher, and she's like, you're the teacher.
Yeah.
You know, like she put you here. She put you in the position that you're supposed to be in.
Yeah.
You know, and while some people will think that I've just put myself out there, which I have.
Which you have to in life when you're passionate about something, plain
and,
simple.
You know, but at the same time, like, I didn't start this journey on my own. Manitoba Public Insurance invited me in.
And you walked and you followed the journey because it was your calling. And I believe that. And
you just do, you know, like, things will fall as they may.
Yeah.
You know, some days, some years we'll have a really successful. You had 80 presentations last year. I did 58.
Beautiful.
Which I thought was insane because of working full time and farming and everything as well. You know, and when you think about it, you can knock off summer basically because you're not necessarily going to have a whole bunch in July and August. You know, you might have a few, but you know, it's when you think about the months that you actually did do presentations, it condenses that year.
Yep.
And like it's, you know, been relatively slow going for me this year so far. But I'm not pushing it, you know, like I'll reach out, I will figure things out, and, you know, like the requests will come in.
Yeah.
And like, you know, it might be the way of saying, you know, maybe you need to slow down a little bit once in a while.
Well, once again, I could relate with that a great deal. You know, I was running flat out, working long hours until February break. Yeah. I was forced to sit on the couch for 4 days.
You can probably hear my nasalness.
So we're sharing that together. So real quick, I have to apologize to everyone who's going to be listening to this or watching this podcast to hear some sniffles and some dryness in our throats, but that's okay. I think you're still going to get a lot of value from this. And just to be quite honest with you, I do not think 50 presentations in a year is not nothing. Just so you know. I know full-time speakers who have reached maybe 30 presentations in a year. So 50 is a lot. And you think of that, tens of thousands of people. It's an incredible journey. And, you know, also once with you too, back in the day, I heard a little bit of criticism for why I was doing this and different things and, you know, becoming a paid speaker and stuff. And I was in the same boat as you. This isn't something I searched out when I was like 14. I'm like, I'm going to do this. You know, it was some folks who reached out to my buddies who I was in the car crash with, you know, years ago, Regan's family, who asked if he'd want to share some of his experiences with everything of the car crash and stuff. And because Regan and his family have always been amazing people to me still, no matter what, we've always been great friends still, even before, that family asked me if I want to share my perspective in that presentation. And so we got a chance to share a presentation together, you know, 3 times a year for a couple of years in a row, and then big hiatus for like 4 or 5 years off. And then I was like, you know what? Last time I got laid off in the trades, I was like, this is what I want to do. I fell in love with it back then. I still struggled with my own mental health and addictions back then. And I was still trying to recover from, you know, all the trauma that I went through mentally back then. And, you know, thankfully it was something that actually helped me become the best version of myself, because it also was therapeutic, but you're also living with fulfillment and hopefully making differences. Not hopefully, you're making differences in people's lives, whether or not you know it or not, right? And that was one of the things that was like my guiding star for me to become the person that I am to this day. If I never get asked to speak with my friend and his my friend about the situation together, I don't know if I'm still here personally, if I can be quite frankly honest. I think my addictions or my old mental health issues would have taken me by now. If I can be honest, I wouldn't have the 3 babies that I have now, all under 4. I wouldn't have the wife that I have now. None of this, the life that I get to live would be here for me. I can pretty much guarantee that. And so I used to look at those naysayers about those kind of subjects, and I just realized you can't make everyone happy in this world, but if you're doing things for the right reasons and the right intentions, whatever is going to blossom is going to blossom. And now we both get to be at a place in our lives where we do this for a good chunk of our lives. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
It's hard. Like I said earlier, like reliving everything over and over. And I do have people that are, fairly close to me that still don't understand why I do it. But the why is Kailynn.
Yeah.
And the because is Kailynn.
Yeah.
And she lived a really full 17 years. But, she missed out on lots.
Yeah.
And I missed out on lots. Her whole family did. And like to be able to, because you could talk to any grieving parent and their biggest worry is that their child is going to be forgotten. And some of that motivation is probably there for that. Like, I don't want her to be forgotten. And I've said before, if I could share this story and be in the background and nobody sees me, I would do that. But that's not how things work.
Yeah.
And, she would want me to be happy.
Yeah.
And I am at my happiest, even though it kind of sounds contradictory. I am at my happiest sharing her story.
I don't think it sounds contradictory. Anyone who knows you knows like I said, you're a powerful woman on a mission to make impact in this world for the best. And there's no doubt in my mind that you're going to continue doing that in front of bigger audiences, more audiences, and you're going to be touching a lot more people's lives for the better.
I would like to, and on my website I have them. Like I would like to get into like the grief portion of things. Distracted driving is the why.
Yep.
But I learned very early on that I grieve a lot differently, and nobody grieves the same. Let's just get that straight right there. I always say that grieving is as individual as your thumbprint. But early on, before we even had our celebration of life, because we had our celebration of life a month after the accident, I went into Chapters and I did their search engine on their computer and I typed in positive grieving. And there was nothing. Wow. And that's all I could think of, is I kept asking myself, how would Kailynn want me to do this? And it just came down to, she want me to be happy. She would have kicked my ass, if we can swear.
Sure.
If I had never gotten out of bed.
Yeah.
And that's not to negate anybody else who struggles.
Yeah.
Because I struggle. I just show my struggles differently.
Yep.
And I will never judge anybody on how they grieve or don't grieve or do things or anything like that. And I would love to, do I have it sort of like as a conversational presentation, because it's not going to be something planned, right? Like I just want it to be a question and answer. I'm an open book. There is not a question that I won't answer.
Yeah.
And grief needs to be normalized, just like the birth of a child is normal. Because everybody dies, we just don't know when.
Yeah.
I don't know a person who is immortal.
That's fair.
And it needs to be normalized in the workplace. It needs to be normalized in families. It needs to be something that is, even like the topic of organ donation, because Kailynn had chosen to be an organ donation after the Humboldt Broncos crash. You know, so she was inspired by Logan Boulet. So she is part of that Boulet effect, you know, and, you know, even to have that conversation, I remember her coming home and saying, like, Mom, I'm going to be an organ donor. And like, yeah, we don't need to talk about that, you know, or people talking about writing a will, you know, well, I don't want to talk about that because, you know, that means I'm going to be dead. Well, obviously you're going to be dead at some point, you know, like, so I just want that conversation surrounding grief to be like not taboo and not I don't want people to be scared to ask me something, you know. And my big thing too with grief, like switching it from the road safety to grief, I remember like people do say stupid things when you're in you know. I have had people say to me like, I know how you feel, I lost my dog last year. You know, and people, when you say that to people, people are like, you're kidding. And at first that was my reaction too, but then I had to step back and I thought about it and I'm like, well, what if that's their only loss that they've ever had?
That's fair, yeah.
That's a huge loss.
Yeah, that's a really good way of...
That is the only thing that only person, animal, or anything that they've lost in their life.
Yeah, that's a really caring way to look at that situation, to be honest,
you know,
Sandra.
So, but that does a lot too to the griever's mental health. Because instead of me internalizing that and getting angry on top of grieving, because anger is a way stronger emotion than anything.
Yeah.
You know, you have to like take the time, slow down, step outside the box, and think of it from another point of view.
Yeah. And
I've done that since Kaylynn's accident. You know, like when she was in the hospital, I was in constant contact with her friends. Her friend that she was supposed to be meeting out at the farm that she was going to that day, who actually drove up at the accident.
Oh yeah.
You know, saw her car, knew that that was her car. You know, his stepdad was the fire chief who was the first on scene. So like they all knew Kailynn. You know, so that family was impacted huge, you know, so like it's those things that you have to, and I did it for my own mental, even I reached out to the train crew. Mm-hmm. You know, I had their names in the police report, found one of them on Facebook, and I had to reach out because I wanted to make sure that they knew that I didn't think it was their fault, that they had no blame in this. That collision was 100% Kaylynn's fault. There was nobody else at fault. And that was a huge thing for me at the beginning because I had nobody to be angry with. Yeah. You know, when your child is murdered or, you know, assaulted or hurt or something at the hands of somebody else, you've got, you know, anger that you can shift to another person. The only place that their anger, that anger could go was Kailynn.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe myself for not making her drive in with me to work that day. You know, so it's the roller coaster of emotions, but you know, in grief you have to slow things down. You have to, you know, think before you jump on things.
Yeah.
And I just, you know, that's another conversation that needs to be had with everybody.
Yeah. Well, many of us are reactive, plain and simple. You know, we wait for something to happen in our lives and then we react. Yeah. Not often accordingly, you know, especially if, you know, I'm somebody who's working on it on a constant basis as well, too. I literally got a tattoo reminder on my hand. It says breathe, of course. And just because I am a person when I am attacked or I'm criticized or something, or even my kids, you know, like they can get me worked up. I can get worked up. Okay, it's just old me that has a switch that can just go on. And the amazing difference that a person can have in their own life is by just taking a moment to sit, reflect, and to breathe. It can really restart your whole nervous system, you know. You can't change how everything else is in this world, but you can definitely change how you react to everything in this world.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's a big part of it. I mean, you know, I think that's also when a lot of things can get done. When you realize to just slow down, pace yourself, and look at things in a more smarter way instead of just
Well, and I
jumping on
mean, it's,
pins.
even the slowing down and thinking before you speak kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's relative to distracted driving.
Yeah.
Like I
Very
always say to
much.
people, like, put your phones away.
Yeah.
There is nothing that you are going to miss between point A and point B that is not going to be there when you get to point B.
Yeah.
And in turn, to those people that are at the house or their place of work that know that those people are on the road,
Yeah.
you know that they're driving, don't call them.
Yeah.
And I mean, yes, the cars have the fancy hands-free and this, that, and everything else, but like new drivers can't use it.
Yeah.
So, you need to be respectful of their time. And, in relation to the slowing down and thinking before you speak sort of thing, it's all the same, like life is too fast right now.
Yeah.
And that's why we're so connected to our phones,
Yeah.
is because everything, we can't miss everything. 30 years ago, we would have had to wait for the 6 o'clock news to learn that this drug lord in Puerto Vallarta was killed.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have had it instantaneous, and, there's pros and cons.
Yeah.
The definite pro is that everybody knows to be safe and
Yeah.
everything. The con is the anxiety that you have now because, like, I have friends that are over there right now.
Yep. So
So
do I. Yep.
it's, when life is going by so fast, you're going to miss things.
Yeah. Very much so.
And I always tell, people with young kids, when you're sitting in your living room and your kids are playing with their toys and they're at that developmental age like your daughters are,
Yeah.
and if you're scrolling through Facebook, stop and think about what did you just miss in the 5 minutes that you were looking at your phone?
Yep. 110%. I am a firm person. Like one of the things I try the most as being a dad is that if I needed to and I wanted to and I was doing that, I could spend hours and hours and hours on my phone just
Yeah.
replying to messages, phone calls, emails, and then doing social media posts and stuff like that. But it's one of the things that I try my best is that when it's family time, unless it's somebody that like, my mom, we're visiting her this past weekend or whatever, and we're talking about plans, it's a quick text message. It's not spending hours and hours on your phone because, our oldest daughter is about 3.5 now. And so just remembering her being 3.5 to being like bringing her home from the hospital, especially with how busy life can be, it's like a blink of an eye, and it truly feels like that. And it's like, how many blinks of eyes do you miss when you're on your phone? And the worst part about it is I always try and keep this in mind. So often I miss a lot of messages. Often I don't reply to people for days at a time. And I feel like I'm just like, a lot of people are probably thinking I'm ignoring them out there in the world. And I'm like, I'm trying to be a present father.
Yeah.
When it's work mode and I'm in my workspace, I can message you. I'm not going to sit every day, all day, and just while I'm with my family and be at disposal for people. And the truth is, I've heard so many different people in this life basically say that, oh, this world's crazier than it's ever been. It could possibly be a part of that, or it could be that we're never shut off, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like you said, with the phone thing, the Mexico thing, it's very true. And, every time somebody says this world's never been crazier than it has been to this day, I say we have never been more connected in life than we have ever been to this day. So I took a workshop through Tony Robbins a few years ago as a business program that I took for like 6 days virtually. Spent a few dollars more than I had at the time. But one of the things that really stuck with me is that so many people look for the negative things that we have in this world to look at, right?
Right.
But he said things haven't changed all that much in our lives. And he showed a couple big newspaper articles side by side of two past, politicians talking about each other. And some of the things that they were saying in 1920 or whatever it was, they weren't very nice things. Now, did everyone read them? There's a good chance that no, they didn't, because they didn't have phones at their capabilities all the time, right? So like you can pop up your phone and see a news media ad for their articles of what they said about each other. But back then, people were still saying some rude stuff about each other back then.
Exactly.
It's just, it wasn't always in your face, you know?
You weren't in the know.
Exactly. And so I always like to try and bring people back from thinking that this world is just a dark, ominous place. I mean, it has its moments of life where things are very tough. You know, we know that. But it also has a lot of beauty on the other side of it too. And we have to remember the world isn't, you know, all dark and gloom. There's a lot of positive things to look into this life.
Yeah.
As
And
well too.
I'm lucky enough, like, I mean, I live in the country in Saskatchewan, and yes, I have internet and all that, you know, but we live a relatively simple life. Like, we are, you know, heat our house by wood,
Yep.
you know,
Beautiful. I love that.
quiet. We farm. We don't have the hustle bustle. I don't have a store 2 blocks away, so you have to plan or, you know, cook what you have in your house. You know, but there's something to be said in how grounded you feel. You know, when you dig in the garden and you grow your own vegetables and you have your own animals that you're feeding every day, and not saying that everybody's got to go and buy a farm, you know, but simple is peaceful.
Yeah.
And you can be, you know, it could be as simple as, you know, once 6 o'clock hits or 6:30 hits, your phone goes in a basket and you don't check it until the next morning.
I love that.
You know,
love that.
And I'm guilty of that. Like, my husband and I, we don't have little people at home anymore, and we will sit in the living room watching TV, both on our phones. You know, and you know, it's addicting. That's all it is. It's like an addiction. It's a bad habit, but you can break bad habits.
Most definitely. When you have enough intention behind something and enough why, we know you can do a lot of things in this world. And don't get me wrong, for those who might feel bad saying, like, I scroll all the time, people are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to make sure you do that.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
They try their very best. And like, to think that you're up against somebody who's just kind of casually making you do that, that's not a thing.
And we don't want you to not scroll, because you won't see our social media posts.
That's right. And you won't be able to see this podcast that we're going to post out today. Within about a half an hour, it's going to be out in the world for us and whoever else to listen to. But, you know, Sandra, I have, I'll be honest, I love this episode with you. It was so great to catch up. I really enjoyed our time together, and we literally only made this happen like 3 days ago. Friday, I messaged you, hey, you want to be, you know, I've been thinking we should chat. And you're like, yep, let's do this. Literally, how's Monday? Boom, let's make this happen. And that's not always the case for us, hands down, right?
No,
it could have been like 3 weeks for both of us to even have it any day.
Months.
Or months, yeah. It was just how it was meant to happen.
Yeah.
And even though it's a Monday, even though my workspace is super cold because I turned off my unit here, I'm congested, you're congested. I truly wanted to start this podcast because I wanted people to get value. I wanted them to get lessons. I wanted them to hear amazing people. I wanted to have conversations with amazing people, because we are such a fast-paced life where a lot of times my interactions, unless it's at a school or, you know what I mean, it's all family, which I love, but I don't as much as I used to get to have these one-on-one conversations because life is as busy as it is. This is one of the reasons why I started this podcast, is so that I could have these meaningful conversations and get to hear other people's journeys as well. And I believe that your journey, what we shared here today, is going to resonate with so many people. So many people are going to be able to really take a lot from this this time together me and you had. And for whoever's going to listen, they're going to get it. And for whoever's not, that's okay either. But it's been, you know, absolutely fantastic to be able to chat with you like this, Sandra. Thank you so much for taking an hour and a half out of your day on a Monday to have this time together. One quick apology to anyone who's listening to this for the sniffles and the teary eyes and stuff like that. But that's humanness, right? And that's another reason why this podcast had to start. We need more humanness times in our lives.
Absolutely.
So, Miss Sandra, once again, thank you very much. Is there anything that you'd love to maybe end us off with? If people want to get in touch with you, contact you for any reason, possibly schools or anything like that?
Find me on Facebook. My Facebook is Sandra LaRose, Road Safety Speaker. And I have my private, like my my personal account as well. You can reach me by email at sandra@sandralarose.ca, and you can visit my website at sandralarose.ca.
Okay. Fantastic, Sandra. Thank you so much. And for everyone who has given us two of the most precious resources another human being can give to another human being, that's your time, that's your energy. Me, and on behalf of Sandra, I have nothing but appreciation for every single one of you who have helped us by that exchange. This has been an episode of the Life is Limitless podcast. I'm Cody Demery, and we had the privilege of having Miss Sandra LaRose. Thank you, everybody, and I hope everyone has a good rest of your week moving forward. Thanks, guys.